Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Larry Mazza.
So they officially kept me with him. Now, with that, he's dying of AIDS. I would wind up then with Greg Jr. back, if the years went on and he got back out. So it's all timing. That was my point. You got to realize that. You hear about a guy, sometimes you hear about a guy that, he's a captain, and other people, what was that? Are scratching their heads. Yeah, well, they're scratching their heads. How'd they make this guy a captain? Another guy gets straightened out. He goes introducing himself. You're not even supposed to talk about it. And, and I'm not going to mention that guy's name because he was around us and it was embarrassing. But, business. If I was in a good time with the sports business that I had, and it's timing because I knew the business good. I learned it. I was sharp with numbers. I still am. I still consult for it. But Scappy was the skipper, and he had guys downtown that were in the business. They weren't making money. Greg brought me downtown. Those guys now brought their business to me. He took me to see Joe Piney. Joe Piney was the consigliere of the Gambino family. Nice old man. I got to sit down with him and his main bookmaker. They started giving us the business. So the timing was there. If I couldn't just go to Joe Piney and say, hey, I'm going to take this guy with me, It's a lot of time, all the things. So some guys walk with their chest really far out, and they got to remember, the time was right, because there's bigger killers than you, there's bigger killers than me that never got there,
Yeah.
Look at Hugh McIntosh. He's not Italian, but that was the closest best friend to Junior Persico out of anybody, probably except his brother Ali.
Yeah, and he was with him all the time, right? His right-hand man.
Yep, yeah, and big man, brutal, tough guy, killer. But the timing was never going to be right because he wasn't Italian.
Now, did you have a lot of dealings with the other families?
Yeah, basically sports. I mean, I would, but again, I'll go back to that. Let's say timing. Let's say we win the war. There's probably no doubt that Jimmy and I are going to be moved up a little bit. I was already going direct to the consigliere. So he was hinting to me what that meant, so there was a good chance that if we put it back together and, Greg is semi-retired and Greg Jr. is in jail, who's going to run the 13th Avenue guys? They have to come through somebody as a liaison. And I was told that anybody from 13th Avenue would have to come through me. Now, it didn't get officially happen, but it was laying the groundwork if we were able to survive the law. So, and if that would have happened, then I'd be higher up the ladder. So maybe I'd be doing business in the construction or in the unions or, the real big money that they keep to themselves. But up until that point, I never had anything to do with that. I made my money in the sports business, and I dealt with every family. We dealt with guys under the chin, under John Gotti, and even before him, under Paul Castellano. Plenty of Bonanno guys, right along where my pool room was, Bath Avenue. Lucchese's. I don't remember if I do. There was one Lucchese guy that we dealt with. His nickname was Space. That was his name on in the business. So yeah, and naturally our family tremendously.
And what was Wild Bill Catulo like?
Well, Billy was very. He was a John Gotti type of guy. Very charismatic, good looking, smiled nice. Actually, he was better spoken, more well spoken than John Gotti. When you hear John talk, he was. He was thuggish. He didn't really talk like a businessman or like, an educated, smooth guy. Billy was smoother and educated and always well dressed. But, we were told, early on when we were, representing the family, the crew, you got to dress right. I got chased home because I came to the club in shorts one time. I came back from the beach and I went straight to the club. Greg told me, go home. Don't ever come back here in shorts again. So the
Oh,
next,
because it makes you come across a certain way when you're
yeah,
wearing shorts and all
yeah.
relaxed, right?
And I was 19. The next day
Yeah.
I went to the beach in dress pants. I had to hang out for 2 hours on the beach in dress pants and then go to the club. So, but things like that, and the facial hair is you're supposed to be well shaved, groomed. Junior Persico would never let his guys not wear suits or sport jackets. He expected them to dress like CEOs. And I don't think I ever saw Junior outside of jail in a picture or even like the 2 times I seen him in life, he was in a suit. Uh, but pictures, you never see him anywhere, not in a suit. Big Alley, same thing.
What times have you met Carmine?
I didn't meet him. I didn't, well, I take that back. I never had any business. I took Greg there to see him once, and I was going to walk away. And Greg said first, come and say hello to my nephew, Larry. Shook his hands. This is such a pleasure to meet you, sir. And I walked away. The next time I dropped Greg off, I waved and I walked away. 2 times. That's it. You're not going to get close. You're not supposed to. I'm not supposed to. But that's how close Greg was with him. That he just, he
Yeah.
was able to do that. And then I met other guys, like I met Alley Boy Jr., Little Alley Boy, I should say, at Whispers, which was a hot nightclub back in the day. And I mean, I knew who he was when I walked in, but the 2 guys with him, Frankie Blue Eyes, Frankie Sparacco, and a guy named Reynolds, go back with him for many, many years. Them I knew a little better. And they introduced me to him. So I saw him in there a lot. Again, a lot, it means maybe a half a dozen times because he was always in and out of jail. He didn't have that much freedom. So while he was out, he probably went to Whispers every Friday night. And if I came on Friday night, I would see him. Never had any direct business with him. And the only real time I got to know him and get close with him was when we were in jail fighting the case.
Meeting these people for the first time, are you like awestruck? Like, damn, I'm finally getting to the top
Well,
of the ladder.
I don't know if that's the word because I was with Greg and Greg was his feet, that. So they can almost be looking at me the same way. This is Greg's number one guy. Not that they were. You know what I mean? You don't want to come off that way. So I was, good to meet you. Like, thanks. Heard a lot of good things. But you always have in the back of your head, you want to watch to see his ways. Is he bravado? Is he macho? Is he gonna, talk to somebody down? And I didn't see any of that. Some people say John Gotti Jr., when he would go out because of who his father was, he would overdo it.
Yeah.
I seen him out once or twice. And, I mean, there's probably something to be said for that. I ran into Victoria once in a club, and it was, she was pretty much, I'm a Gotti, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew. It's so, it depends on the person. But awestruck, I'm trying to think if there was ever a time where I really got awestruck over a fellow mob guy, and I honestly didn't. But I got impressed in different ways. I told the Joe Schapano story a few times. He was a older guy. Probably when I met him, he was about maybe 80, 82, but he didn't look it. He had a full head of hair, grayish hair. He dressed impeccably well with a sport jacket, maybe a turtleneck or a nice shirt. And he hung out at Randazzo's in Sheepshead Bay. And this guy owed me money, and a message was sent if we'd go see this Joe. He's there every Wednesday. Now, I couldn't go alone because it's early on in my tenure, and I went with Greg, obviously. We sat down, very cordial. They were very good to see each other. It's a long time, but I was so impressed with the way Joe spoke, and I remember this to this day. I don't think he used a curse word once, and the way he handled it, and everything we patched. I got my money. Or maybe I wait a week or two, whatever it was resolved. And Jimmy and I made it a part of our weekly routine to go there every Wednesday and have a drink with him at lunch because he liked to drink a Rob Roy. It's an old fashioned drink, like an old fashioned or a Manhattan. You don't really hear about them as much anymore. but it's an old fashioned drink with some bitters in it, and whatever they do. I want to say some kind of whiskey mixed with something else. Anyway, and Jimmy and I would have a glass of wine, or maybe whatever. We'd get some clams and we'd spend time with him, and he liked that. He looked forward to us coming. And I always said, you know what? You don't have to, after him. Greg was a meaner looking guy. He had a deep voice, but he didn't use curse words just to use them, Greg. He used them to emphasize something. Like, some guys will just throw the F word out everything they're talking about. Greg used it to emphasize. Like he could say, "Oh, that girl's really nice. Man, is she fucking nice." There's a difference. He didn't just use it, but this guy, I never heard him curse, this Joe. And I tried to be that way. And for a long time I was, but it's hard when you're around a lot of guys that just keep cursing. And, Brooklyn guys especially. But I did for a while. I was real conscious, and I still try to this day because I think it's more impressive to sit down and, iron something out without cursing and banging the table. And, so there's different people that, but I wasn't in awe of him. I just was impressed. I guess early on when I first met Big Greg and I found out who he was and the treatment I was getting just from knowing him, I guess that's awestruck a little bit. Walking into a place and the cook comes out, the maitre d' comes running over. He's got a private table waiting. There's 2 bottles of wine there already. Linda gets treated like the queen, So I was, that's probably when I was awestruck. But then I became part of it. And, I would think the younger kids were starting to, and somebody told me that once. When I came back home in Florida, this is a funny story. I'm not going to use his name, but he's what do you call it? A Brevard County sheriff. Okay. Deputy. He's not the sheriff, but he moved up, became a lieutenant, a sergeant. But anyway, at the time I meet him, I think he was just a sergeant. Well, yeah. Then he moved up. I don't know the exact status, whether it's corporal, captain, lieutenant, but whatever it was, he moved up twice since I reconnected with him. Anyway, I pull into the mall on the island I live on, Merritt Island. And my wife, Kelly's going to run into the store to exchange something. So I pull over in a fire zone. I'm out of the way. I'm not bothering anybody. I'm just going to wait there for 5 minutes. All of a sudden, I see the cop car pull up behind me. He pulls up alongside of me. So I open the window and I say, he says, "You're in a fire zone." So I says, "I'm sorry, officer. My wife ran in for 5 minutes. I figured I'd just sit here." He says, "They never take 5 minutes in a mall." I laughed. I said, "I'll move." He says, "You don't have to move, Larry." And he drives off. I'm saying to myself, how the hell? Now, he could have ran my plate, but I don't think he did. And I don't even remember if I was in Kelly's car or mine, to be honest with you. So long ago. It was like 20 years ago. But now I'm wondering, how does he know who I am? The next day he comes back. It's his off day. He comes to my gym. He pulls up in a big white caddy. And he's got his wife with him. He gets out. And he says, "Larry, I'm from 13th Avenue. My father was around some of you guys." He says, "When all this stuff happened, I moved to Florida. He died. My father died. And I had to start a new life." He says, "But when you guys were on 13th Avenue, we looked up to you. We emulated you. We loved you guys." And here he is. So I get that question. Other people, when you're on the outside looking in, it's more, I guess, able to become awestruck. But when you're in it, you don't look at it that way.